Good afternoon. My name is Doug Watkins and I'm an ecologist working from Australia. In my talk, I want to bring an ecologist perspective to the issue of urban wetlands. And I want to draw an international story together to illustrate how wetlands can become very vibrant community areas within cities. The title of the talk is Flyaways, Wetlands, Cities and Communities. My talk has four sections. Firstly, I'll introduce a little about multilateral agreements for the environment. Secondly, I'll talk a little bit about migratory water birds and their flyways. And this will then be followed by four case studies showing important wetlands in some of the major cities in East Asia and Australasia. And fourthly, I'll provide some concluding remarks. Firstly, a little background. My work experience involves working with civil society organizations and also as a consultant. In the early part of my career, I could get out and do lots of biological work on the ground, both in Australia and across Asia. But soon, the ecological work turns into sharing that and working with wetland managers. And I've spent quite a bit of time in North Asia running workshops with wetland managers, getting them to share their information and to work together to improve wetland management. And then moving from national workshops to international workshops, where you bring people from a range of countries together and get them to share their experience and look for insights that they can take back to their own countries. There's now a large range of multilateral collaboration mechanisms for the environment. Listed here are some of those that have a special focus on biodiversity. The Convention on Biological Diversity is one of the very important ones, providing policy frameworks for countries. There are some more niche conventions, like to do with trade on endangered species and the Convention on Migratory Species of Wild Animals. The Ramsar Convention is one of these and one of the oldest of the conventions. World Heritage and two very important United Nations frameworks, one on the Convention on Climate Change and also the Convention to Combat Desertification. India became a party to the Ramsar Convention in 1982. The convention has three major obligations. The first one is the wise use of wetlands by each party. The second is designating wetlands of international importance for listing under the convention, and then the effective management of those areas. India has 26 sites now that are listed as Ramsar sites. Thirdly is international cooperation on transboundary wetlands, shared wetland systems and shared species like the migratory waterbird species. In India, the convention is the responsibility of the Ministry of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and the ministry has a national wetlands conservation program and also promotes World Wetlands Day. The convention has a number of regional initiatives that they've developed in recent years, and two of these I just draw attention to. One is the development of Ramsar regional centres, and one of these is in East Asia, actually based in South Korea, and India is covered in the geographic area of this regional centre. Just late last year, the Ramsar Regional Centre actually organised a symposium on urban wetlands in Asia, and as part of that, looked at sustainable urban development. The important bits in here, or the bits that are relevant to my experience, are places for recreation, education, and as habitat for wildlife. The second regional initiative is one about migratory water birds, the Partnership for the East Asian Australasian Flyaway. And the secretariat for this is actually also based in South Korea. Each year, migratory water birds undertake amazing migrations of up to 25,000 kilometres. These birds have adapted to utilising the productive grasslands and wetlands in the Arctic and northern latitudes to nest and raise their chicks. The patterns of migration are divided into 9 flyways, and each of these flyways is running basically north-south. And that's because it's the changing in the seasons that are driving the birds on migration. They can only utilize their breeding area for 2 to 3 months, and then with the advent of the northern winter, the birds have to move south to use other habitats. So in our part of the world, there are two flyways. One is the East Asian Australasian Flyway, shown here on the right-hand side, and then India is in the center of the Central Asian Flyway. And so these are you can see that there is considerable overlap between the two flyways, and there are birds that breed in the same area, which may be going to India or which may be coming to Australia. So the birds don't follow our nice lines. And so these are the flyways of the world. The East Asian Australasian Flyway is where my experience is based and where I'll draw from for my case studies. In this flyway, the birds are nesting in northern China and the Russian Far East. But by July, August, the weather is changing and the birds need to move south. They move through into China and Korea and Japan, North Asia. Some stay there for the next 6 months, but other species will move all the way on to Australia and New Zealand. By March, April, the birds now start moving north again, so they can be ready to shift on to their nesting areas as soon as the snow has melted. This is an example of one of the species of migratory water birds. This is the bar-tailed gobwit. And on the map you can see red dots down in New Zealand, Australia, and particularly in the Yellow Sea in China and Korea, and the green areas, which are the breeding areas for the species. Now, the dots don't really tell the story. From satellite tracking, we know that on the way north, birds from Australia and New Zealand are flying into the Yellow Sea area to feed on migration, and then moving on to the breeding areas to the north. But on southward migration, many of these birds will fly directly from Russia and Alaska to Australia and New Zealand. So they need the Yellow Sea site on their way north, but they're not using it on their way south. Now, if we superimpose all of those sites of international importance, we come up with a picture shown in the blue dots here. And there are over 1,000 internationally important sites for migratory water birds across this flyway. In the Flyway Partnership, one of the elements that has been developed is networking these important sites. And so the ones in red show sites that have joined the Flyway network and are working with the partners in the Flyway Partnership to improve the management of those sites. Now, the Flyway Partnership, which is a Ramsar Convention initiative, is a partnership between governments, international government organisations, international non-government organisations, and the corporate sector. These partners are collaborating for the conservation of migratory waterbirds and their habitats, and a major way of doing that is the linking of these important sites into a Flyway site network. At a number of these network sites, there are wetland centres which are run by government or by community organisations, and these wetland centres are places for education activities and engaging the local communities with wetlands. And what I'll move on to show you is case studies from 4 of these areas, one in Japan, another in South Korea, and then Hong Kong, and a modest example here from Canberra in Australia. The first case study is from Japan, and in the city of Tokyo, the nation's capital. And here you can see Tokyo Bay around the city. And you can see some of the major pressures on the habitat that's used by migratory waterbirds, the intertidal habitat. And around Tokyo Bay, there's over 100 kilometers of reclamation out into the bay. And this is an example of where community action has led to a small area of mudflat remaining left behind by the reclamation process. And this area of mudflat is still a tidal area. It's connected by 2 channels to Tokyo Bay. And here the local government has developed an education centre which has a large role in running educational activities for schools and also activities for the local community. This mudflat area, even though it's now separated from Tokyo Bay, still supports small numbers of shorebirds on migration to and from Australia. It's just a remarkable sight to see this little bit of mudflat left now isolated but connected to Tokyo Bay. The second example is from South Korea on the south coast. Here there is a regional city called Suncheon, and adjacent to the city is the Ramsar site. In the mid-2000s, Suncheon City elected a new mayor, and at that time the city needed to decide on its development direction. As you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, the adjacent area went down the path of reclamation and large-scale heavy industrial development. For Suncheon, that was a much more difficult path to follow because of the geography of Suncheon Bay, and also Suncheon Bay was now a Ramsar site. So it decided to take a green development direction. And it established a local government and community council to work together on a ecotourism future for the city. The city recognised that the natural and scenic values of the Suncheon Bay Ramsar site and the flocks of cranes that visited each year could be a core part of their tourism drive. And they needed to develop a way to link the area by the bay back to the city. And so they developed a large garden concept linked by light rail to the nature centre. Today there's a beautiful garden area, fully landscaped. There's a natural history museum, and the light rail then linking it on to the nature park down by the Ramsar site. Many of the visitors to Suncheon Bay come from Busan and Seoul, the big cities where they live in multi-story apartments. And the trip to Suncheon Bay gives them the opportunity to see the countryside and enjoy the open spaces and the natural environment. The ecotourism drive has been a major success. Suncheon City has a population of 280,000 people, but by 2010 they had tourist numbers of almost 3 million visitors, and by 2015 that had almost doubled to 5.2 million visitors. The new challenge facing the city is to link these visitors back into their city and bring a larger amount of the economic benefit into the businesses, into the city itself. So this is an extremely valuable example about how local government has really successfully developed a ecotourism base around the Ramsar site. The third example comes from Hong Kong. And here there is a Ramsar site in a deep bay, and this area is important for tens of thousands of migratory water birds throughout the year. The government has developed a large wetland centre as a key tourism feature for Hong Kong, and by 2016 it had visitor numbers approaching 500,000, including about 10% of overseas tourists. The visitor centre conducted over 4,000 guided tours for over 75,000 visitors. In addition, it runs a series of educational talks, primarily for the local community, and that attracted over 3,400 participants. Adjacent to the Wetland Centre and Wetland Park are these huge apartment buildings. And so the park area is such a valuable place for people living in these apartments to come out into an open public area. Play areas and providing educational opportunities for the local community and other visitors, and also walkways through the edge of the park. Just to the north of the park area is an area of old fish ponds that are managed by WWF Hong Kong. And this has been set up for more than 20 years and is a refuge area for water birds with limited access into the area. My final example brings you to Canberra in Australia. This city is the national capital, and it was actually constructed to be the seat of government. So it's unusual in that much of the city was planned before construction started. The key landscape feature of the inner city is the construction of this lake formed by the damming of the small river that ran through the city. Towards the right-hand side, the area shown in green is the Jerrabomberra Wetlands Nature Reserve, and this is the area that I'll be talking about. In recent years, the Territory Government has moved to create partnerships between government and civil society. In this example has been the creation of the Woodlands and Wetland Trust, and this works with the Territory Government to manage and enhance education at an area of woodlands and an area of wetlands. This area shown here, the Jerrabomberra Wetlands, also has a link to the migratory bird story because it has nationally important numbers of snipe that visit it each year from their breeding areas in Japan. At the moment, the Trust provides technical advice and support for the management of the area and has developed plans for a major visitor centre for the area. This visitor centre will then provide the focus for environmental education activities raising the awareness of the community about the values of the natural environment, and provide opportunities for people to become involved in contributing towards the management of a wetland site in their city. In concluding, I'd like to make 4 remarks. Firstly, whilst we divide ourselves into nation states, we all live in one world. Multilateral environmental agreements are important in providing our governments with collaborative frameworks to work towards global sustainability. Secondly, wetlands provide valuable opportunities to maintain and showcase biodiversity in urban areas. Third, with sound planning and management, wetlands can foster the vitality of urban communities. And finally, in your future work, look for and deliver on these opportunities. Thank you.